All right, dude. Welcome. Welcome to the Nathaniel podcast.
Hey man, how's it going?
Look, Deighton, everybody. Would you want to introduce yourself, Luke?
Yeah, like I said, Luke Deighton, I'm a father, loving partner, business owner, entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it. I like to call it custodian. I think of like that. We'll get into that a little bit later, but I like to think of these projects that I'm involved in as having their own energy, and so I'm really just a custodian of it, right? Rather than having that ownership piece. But yeah, look, um, 32, live in Australia on the in Western Australia, down in the southwest. Beautiful part of the world. We've got 5 acres here, plenty of space for our boys to run around, and it's a beautiful part of the world to raise a family and do what we're doing. So yeah,
Yeah, I've seen your Twitter posts, like your kids just running around. Is that your place? Like that you're allowed?
yeah, that's where we are.
Cool. That's like,
That's our backyard. So it looks over the
yeah,
paddock. Yeah, you can sort of see the one with the recently that I put up about with the sunset, so you can sort of see like our
yeah.
neighbours attic, and yeah, but we've got 5 acres and it's a beautiful part of the world, nice quiet little estate and plenty of room for the boys to run around. Ideally, I'd love to have another 100 or so acres and have some livestock and have like a community centre, but
Mm,
we're working towards that. It's a nice little stepping stone for us. Yeah.
that's awesome, dude. Like the sunset that you post all the time, it's just beautiful.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, it's a magical view. Yeah, we're very, very lucky. I mean, before we moved out, we lived in town in Bunbury, the place is called, and it's nice, right on the ocean, beautiful beaches, and we probably missed that beach element of being so close to the ocean. But yeah, I wouldn't trade where we are now for the world right now. It's like I say, magic sunsets, magic sunrise. It's nice and quiet. We've got a couple of horses, we've got chickens. Yeah, boys have a lot of fun and plenty of space for them to run around, and it's pretty safe out here too. So
so speaking of being a boy, I researched about you and I saw that you're a basketball player back then.
yeah. No, I played basketball. Yeah, yeah. Played for WA, so I played state level, and played for our local state league side. So it's a little bit more professional now. Like it's sort of like really ramped up since I stopped playing. I've created like a national competition. So like you got the NBL, so the Wildcats and those kind of teams. And then the league playing at the level below that. So some people are paid, some people aren't. But yeah, I had a lot of fun. I was president of one of the local basketball associations for a long time. I'm a life member there. I'd say I'd one of the youngest life members in an association, sort of set up in the state, really. It's pretty unheard of to be a life member at 31. So, but I volunteered a lot of my time and gave a lot of my life and a lot of energy in that space. And so I love the club, and I'm still involved and still touch base with all the guys a lot of the time, and it's holds a special place in my heart, that's for sure.
That's awesome, dude. Because like I also played some basketball back then.
Cool.
Um, and I kind of like train physicality, like an athlete. Like I lift weights, I run, things like that. So I'm just curious, like, because for me, I think there's something about like doing some physical activity, training, like military, athletics, something like that, that contributes to entrepreneurship. Like, what
Mm.
would you think? How did the basketball aspect translate to your work now?
Yeah, beautiful. I think like the discipline the discipline to get to a higher level, it takes hours of training, and sort of like a committed and a focus of like doing what you love. And I think that's probably a similarity of that. I loved basketball growing up, and I loved being involved, and I put my time into it. And I had dreams of going on to bigger and better things. And then for whatever reason, there was a couple of different circumstances where politics got in the way, and
Mm.
I sort of lost sight of what I was doing it for, and lost that passion, and then started into other passions, and turned down going away to America because I was in love with someone. And 6 months later, 6 months later they went off and did their own thing, and we broke up, and it was like oh, we got this for but like I guess it was a really good learning point for me of like just following my own heart, and following what's true for me. And I guess back to your original question, I think that camaraderie from a teamwork point of view, that leadership, that definitely translates over. The ability to just be able to relate to anyone and sort of put any differences aside when you're on the court, for that common goal.
Mhm.
I think that's really important in any project that you're involved in, is being able to relate to people, being able to work with them, being able to understand where they're coming from. And even if you don't see things exactly eye to eye, being able to go, okay, well, this is where we're going. We can agree on this part. This is what we're looking to work towards. How do we get there? How do we make sure that we're not, like, our differences aren't going to impact on that? And that's probably
No.
something that's come through from sport and that teamwork aspect.
So, I love what you said there about like having the mentality of doing it as a group. But have you ever had like a time in your life where you kind of like, because I like Kobe Bryant, like he's my favorite basketball player, and he always talks about like he had a quote where Shaq went up to him and he was hogging the ball, and then Shaq said, "Kobe, there's no I in team," and then he's like, "Well, there's a ME in that." Motherfucker, he said something like that. So, like, have you ever had a time in your life when you kind of like thought, I can do this on my own. I can carry the team. I can, like if I'm so excellent, everyone will follow, something like that.
Yeah, probably not so much in the sporting aspect of the basketball sense. I think there's probably moments where I went like, I'm going to go and take the ball and I'm going to score, and I'm going to, this is my time. When you're the captain or when you're in that, like, easy for me. I was point guard, so I had the ball in my hands, and if I thought that I needed to go and do something, that's what was going to happen, And I guess there's times where that comes through as well when you're demanding the ball off your team. Like you might, the other team scored like 2 or 3 times in a row, and you're like, no, we need a good shot. Let's get
Mhm.
through our sets. Let's get through our offense. Let's actually get a good shot, get it into the ball, like the players' hands that we want. And there's times where I was like, players would take a shot, and I'm just like, that's not the shot we were looking for. Like, just like, what are you doing?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I think, but probably more so now. I was probably a pass first point guard. I was very team orientated, very good passer, very good distributor. I looked after the ball, got guys open, got guys in good scoring positions. Um, I wasn't really a scorer, so to speak, until like I got to sort of 26, 27 and started to be able to sort of really understand the craft of the game. And sort of had to be a scorer in those teams that I was in. So I think more so since I've stepped into that entrepreneur space of like, the way I guess I lead and bring people into my team is that I trust in that I've brought their unique genius in for a reason. And I hold that end result of what we're trying to create. And I'm like, this is where we're going. This is what we're doing. This is what the outcome is. But I trust in their genius to get us there. I'm very much like, yeah, this is what I want you to create. But how you create that, as
It's
long
up
as
to
you
you.
do that, it's up to you. Just get us into that right direction. And sometimes there's been occasions where I'm like, I can't see how this is actually getting us towards that end result. Please explain it. And they haven't been able to. And I'm like, well, this is how we're going to do it. This is the steps we're going to follow then for you to be able to find that. But for the most part, I'm very much, trust in their genius to get us to that end result. And my role as the leader, I guess, or the custodian, the mate, like in that hierarchy, is to hold that end result and then encourage others to flow in their genius.
It's awesome, dude. And I think for me, when you were talking, I just thought when I was because I was also a point guard, right? And when you said that you were a pass first point guard, like me, I was also a pass first, but it's more so like I was kind of afraid of taking the shot.
Mm.
So uh, I guess in my perspective, um, sort of like how would you find a genius in someone if you kind of like don't also find a genius in yourself?
Yeah, 100%. If you can't find it within yourself, you're going to have
Yeah.
a struggle, So, but I've done a lot of work in that space to really tap into those structures and to really desire to find what my genius is, what that flow state is. Got my
Oh.
cup of it's my beautiful partner and Noah. But yeah, I've like done a lot of work in that space to really understand what that looks like. And it wasn't until I sort of came out of that corporate space, I guess, and I really started to understand where those elements had come through in different areas, right? If I
Mm.
think about when I was in the mining game and supervising, I loved that team building aspect. I love that ability to interact with anyone and have those conversations and be able to have a conversation with anyone about any subject. And that to me is a level of my genius, right? It's about being able to
Mm,
relate. It's about being able to connect with people, um, being able to hold that vision of what we're creating, being able to bring people together, working towards a common goal. They're all sort of things that for me are my genius that I never really recognized when I was younger. And so I don't
mm,
think it's until you actually start to get into that space of going all in on yourself that you start to recognize what that genius looks like, and you get to play with
right.
it, and you get to test it all out. There's definitely some structures and things that you can do in that space, like land of plenty meditations and really connecting in with the truth of what your heart is here to create. That can help you get a picture. But until you start taking those steps, until you start actually living it and doing it and understanding, okay, this is where I'm functionally in my genius, this is where I might be dysfunctionally in my ego.
Mm,
You start to understand that balance. But yeah, you're dead right. It's hard to hold others in their genius if you don't know what your genius is yourself.
mm.
Yeah.
So how did you end up like going to mining? Because you came from like a very fun place, you know, an athlete, and then suddenly, how did you like transition into something like corporate?
Yeah, cool. So I was still playing whilst I was in the mines. So we're just outside of my hometown, Bunbury, about 40 minutes out, there's a mine, there's a refinery there. It's one of the biggest alumina refineries in the world. Used to
Mm,
be with BHP, now it's with South 32. Um, I went to I went to uni. I had like 2 years off basketball while I was at uni, played football, Aussie rules, um, and just got into that party mindset and that
yeah, yeah,
drinking,
yeah.
just gambling.
I'm in that. I was that in that state like
Yeah,
a couple of months
I went
ago
off.
too.
Yeah, I went right off the rails, man. Like drugs, alcohol, like really, like from
Yeah.
going from like high level athlete that hadn't drank at all right until I was like 17. Didn't touch alcohol at all till I was
Mm,
17, late, almost 18. And then really stepped into that. Like I said, I had that opportunity to go away, push that back, and then broke up with that person that I'd done that for. And my world just
mm,
sort of really collapsed in a way. My parents got divorced. I all of a sudden was like thrust into this role of being like the man of the house and the
mm,
middleman between the parents. And um, then I went to uni, and it's just like I was living on campus. Four of my best mates had like another place that was on campus, and their place was the party house. So they would like pretty much walk past my door while I'm studying, knock on my window with like a carton of beer on their shoulder, and come on, let's go. And I'm like, all right, no worries,
all right,
I'm
that's good.
and so I was again, I wasn't doing what I loved, and so it was easy to sort of be steered in the wrong direction. I did architecture at uni. I only did 6 months of it, absolutely hated it. The reason I did architecture in the first place was because I could only I could get that score very, very easily for the entrance.
Mm,
Right? I didn't have to
right.
study. I was quite smart at school. In year 12, I only did 4 subjects out of the 5 or 6,
Mm,
and I used the rest of it as an excuse to like practice basketball essentially.
right.
Had all these study periods and that, and but I knew that I only had to get sort of like a mid-tier score to be able to get into architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that because I thought architects made good money. And that was my motivation. I liked
Yeah, yeah.
somewhat
Money.
like drawing. I liked more of the like probably should have gone into drafting. I liked more straight lines. The
Yeah, yeah.
first 6 months of architecture at UWA or at yeah, at Curtin University where I went to is abstract. And so it's very
Mm,
much not my wheelhouse. I'm not an abstract like drawer or painter by any means,
yeah.
man. And like the first day, the tutor walks in, he's wearing a denim hat, he's got denim jacket on, denim jeans, and I'm like, come on, denim on denim. I'm like, oh, I'm just not going to get along with this guy, like straight away. And from there,
Yeah.
it was like we didn't get along. He hated the stuff that I did, which just made me hate architecture even more. Um, I never studied, never did anything, and then sort of got to the end of it and was like, did 3 full nighters to catch up and like pass the first semester.
Right.
Um, and just went, I'm sick of not having money in the bank account. I'm sick of not doing what I like. And I was probably at a point where I was like getting heavier and heavier into the drugs, to the
Hmm.
point where I was like dealing and making connections in that space, and had that moment
Hmm.
of like, if I don't get out of here, like I'm gonna
It's
end
gonna
up
go
in
to
a really
shit.
bad
Yeah.
place. So I went home and got a job working at that mine site that I talked
Hmm.
about. Then they had traineeships come up, and I put my hat in the ring for a traineeship, and was fortunate enough to get one, and um, then worked my way up. A couple of years later, I think a year and a half later, I was supervising, earning Bitcoin and living what most people would say in like in
Like
our
a dream
community.
life.
Yeah, living a like got a career job and set for
Mm.
life, and for a long time that created a great life that was, gave me toys, gave me money, gave
Hmm.
me toys, gave
Hmm.
me a lot of fun, a lot of joy. Um, but slowly, over time, it wasn't as fulfilling, right? And so
All right.
started started to find that I wasn't enjoying it as much. And yeah,
Dude, I feel like we're super similar. Like you're kind of not in my age bracket, but I know what you're saying because so here in the Philippines, it's like you have to go to college
yeah,
here. It's like because it's like if you don't go to college, you won't be respected in a way. You will be seen as a junkie. You know what I mean? It's like college dropout, things like that.
yeah,
So well, like you, I also did well in school, and I got into like a like the top university here, and it's I was a scholar. Like I don't pay for college,
yeah,
so I stayed there. I'm still there, but I took a leave of absence recently. So I studied there for 3 years. On my third year, they're just we had a disagreement in the family, and I had to like leave. So I became independent just last year,
yeah.
and I was looking for jobs. I was working hard. Like I was working weird rackets, like fixing files for people, stuff like that. And then I came upon this. I was lucky enough to find the customer service job that I have now, and it pays well because here, I'm paid in dollars. So when it's converted here in the Philippines, like Philippine pesos, it's like big. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like huge. And I got to live comfortably for like a year. Yeah, last year I was like comfortable, and then I just happened to be like not be happy with where I was. Like even if I was in a comfortable position, like I was talking to older people and they talk about how, oh, you get paid well, you're about to graduate college and you're about to embark in your adulthood. And I just felt like I was doing something that I was being told to do instead of something that I wanted to do.
Mm.
So that's why I kind of like went in all in on the whole Twitter thing, like the whole Twitter money Twitter, because I found that I really love writing, bro. Like I could like write anything for free, like not even get paid for it, and I would like just enjoy publishing my work out there, like having people talk to me, tell me, "Oh, dude, this idea just is so amazing." It's like it opened my mind. It's like when I hear those people when they message me, they DM me, I'll be like, "Dude, I'm so happy that I get to help these people, give them ideas, even if they don't pay me." So
Mm.
that's why I decided to like take a leave of absence in college and just do work and try to monetize the my passion, right? Like monetize writing online because if I could do that, I mean, I'm still willing to finish college. It's just that I might get less money from the work that I'm doing right now, which is a stable 9 to 5, but I'll be able to do what I love. Sorry, did you are you there, bro?
Yeah, back. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry about that. So yeah, as I
Yeah.
was saying, if I can monetize, even if I get paid less than what I was getting paid at in my work, I'd still be doing what I love, so I won't feel like it's a dread.
Absolutely, man. Like that perception of like what's important completely changes, right? of
Yeah.
like what abundance means. And I think that's like been such a catalyst for me as well of like I'm following my heart, I'm following what's true for me. And so the priorities and the metrics that I gauge that success on are different, right? I used to be able to just go to work, get paid, and then live
Mm.
like externally, right? But now I'm sort of like I'm always doing what I love, and that
Right.
creates endless opportunities. And so it's just a whole different kettle of fish. When I left, I had no idea where the next paycheck was really coming from. It was just
Right.
this faith that we had that it was all going to work out, and it's been
Yeah.
the
Yeah. It's
best thing
like,
that's ever happened, right? Um, but I had great support too. Like my sister and I have a business that we've had for the last 7 years together called the Genius Portal, and we
right.
help people do exactly that, right? We help people monetize their magic is our like business course. It's a
Hmm.
12-month container and it's all around like intuitively living from your heart and then sustainably monetizing that, putting those structures in place. It's a beautiful course, like 13 module program, 12-month container. Um, Very, very powerful. And it's helped a lot of people go from nothing to six figures really quickly. Um, and but it's based on that principle of like monetizing what you love to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Like helping
And
people, right?
yeah,
And not
help
just doing
people
it
and
out of money, just really
exactly.
because you want to help people.
Yeah, and being of service first and foremost, and like
Yeah.
in service to yourself by doing what you love, but then also being in service to others.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that creates like a beautiful exchange and a beautiful that abundance starts to flow. At first, you sort of like it's easy to sort of get in your head around like money and that as well because you're so conditioned to like base your
Yeah.
success on financial stuff or status or like toys. How
Yeah.
many toys you got? The thing about all these miners that I know that are like got boats, big cars, fancy houses,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and like they've got them all, but they don't even bloody use them half the time. But
Right.
then you ask them if they're happy, and they're like, "No, I'd rather just like." you know, I don't do what I love. I just want to go and camp or I just want to go and
Yeah.
fish. And most of the
Yeah.
time, what
Yeah.
they love to do is nothing to do with those toys. They just get them because society has painted this picture of this is what success
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
looks like. My friend, a mate of mine has this great analogy for it in that like realistically, we're just conditioned to become rats in a cage. And they put this little bit of cheese on the outside of
Mm.
the cage and they go, oh, well, this is the bigger cheese that you can get now, but you just got to do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you get that cheese and you're like, well, this is cool. I've got a bigger piece of cheese now. And
Yeah.
then put like a bigger piece of cheese in front of you, like a bigger boat, a bigger house, or whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of in this cycle of like chasing those success metrics that realistically keep you where you are,
Right.
and stop you from finding that fulfillment. Or in my experience, anyway, I know met plenty of people that are very, very wealthy that
Mm.
will probably get to their deathbed and feel like they haven't fulfilled anything in their life.
Right.
You
And
see it all the time.
I think what's worse in my perspective, because I've also talked to a lot of people, is uh what person you become in terms of relationship wise. Because I've seen a lot of people who are, wealthy, they're, well off, and they have a lot of material resources. But because they work so hard, they kind of like feel like they don't have time to connect to people. And so they justify their cruelty, like
Mm.
being like just being cruel to people, bad behavior,
Yeah.
because, oh, I'm always tired. I'm always working hard. So I can act like this.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Like that real, just like this is where I'm going, this is what I'm doing, and I don't give a shit about anything else or anyone
Yeah,
else.
yeah,
It's like again, it's that the mind plays that trick on us to go, you can't have it all. You have to choose.
yeah.
You either want to have the
Mm.
success, this is how you have to act, this is how people in that position act. You can't have it all. If you want to have your little family life, you're going to have to sacrifice your career and
Yeah,
go
yeah,
and
yeah.
and I think that was one of the triggers that started to actually start to trigger me to go, well, I'm not doing like I don't feel aligned to the path that I'm on anymore. As they
Mm.
started, I was, I was in all the leadership pathways, young supervisor, always
Mm.
been in leadership positions. So it was natural for me to start to climb the ladder a little bit. And I
Mm.
started to do that, started to think that that was what I wanted to do. And then I was having a chat to my boss, and they were like, well, this is what you're gonna have to do to get there. You're gonna
Mm-hmm.
have to act like this person, watch this person,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
see how they act, see how they talk, see how they like behave. I just looked at this guy and had nothing against them, but I'd never formed a great connection with them. I thought that they were just like speaking crap most of the time. And when I looked in their eyes, they looked dead. Like there
Yeah.
was no light in it. They didn't believe in
Mm-hmm.
what they were saying. They were just saying it because the company told them to. They were just
Mm-hmm.
acting in this way because they were sacrificing who they really were for that pay packet and for that security. And I sort of looked at that and went, I don't want to do that. I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
have to. I don't want to have to speak in a certain way. I don't want to have to behave in a way that's not true for me.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what it means to get ahead, then well, I don't think
I'll
this.
stay
I don't
here.
think I'm aligned anymore with this. You know.
Yeah, I totally
Uh,
get that because for me, I also have that mentality, that realization because adults around me, like I ask them because again they have like they're well off, they have good paying jobs. They could just it's probably like three generations. Their money is worth three generations, but then you see when they're working that they're miserable. Like they don't like what they're doing. Like they're being forced to go to the office and work there for hours. And you see that because when they scroll through their phone, they're happy. It's like they're, just the simple fact that they could like have a break and scroll through their phone, they're ecstatic. And like I asked them, um, do you like what you do? And they sort of like they say no. They even admit to themselves that no, this isn't what I want, but because this is what pays well and this is what my talents align with that pays well, I'll do it.
mm.
Like again, what you said, they're like caged rats who just feed off the biggest cheese that they see instead of
Yeah,
choosing what cheese they want, actually.
exactly. Like not realizing that there's like 400 different options.
Yeah.
It's like being at a bar and someone being like, "Oh, you can have tea and coffee." And it's like, "I can see the whiskey. I want the whiskey.
Yeah.
Don't give me tea and coffee. I want the whiskey." Like,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
but for most people, they just go, oh, "Okay, thanks. I'll have tea then," rather than go, "No, I want the whiskey."
Yeah.
Yeah, you're dead right. It's so many people do it. I think, and I think to be honest, like schooling systems set up to create that in
Mm,
society. It's set up to have that mentality of like becoming a worker, good little worker bee, getting paid
mm,
really well for it, exchanging our time for money, which is, I guess, is the biggest trick that's ever been created. Is that our life force energy, everything that we use to create, it's like the biggest asset we have. It's our most
mm.
important asset. So it's the most important resource on the world is people's time,
Right.
and we've been like conditioned to trade it for money,
Mm,
and to think that we have to, right? That there's no other way that we can't what we love and then trade that for money, or whatever exchange is. I do work with people all the time in an exchange fashion of like, yep, cool. What you have to offer it impacts on me. It's value to me. What I have to offer, here's what I can offer you. Do we feel like that's a fair exchange? Cool, let's do it. Let's not worry about
mm.
financial. Let's do an exchange.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we do
For
that
sure.
with the cacao business. We do that with lots of different things. For me, I put more stock in that, like the energetic exchange of the time and what that's going to do for me and what that's going to do for that other person. And yeah, I think so many people are so conditioned to just be in that space and sacrifice for the great good,
Yeah.
and we're conditioned to think that, especially as men, to be
Mm,
the provider, to be the breadwinner.
mm,
You're conditioned to sacrifice for the greater good for your family, not realizing that invariably that sacrifice will lead to a
right.
disconnection of your family, a disconnection of yourself. As you
Mm,
get more and more disconnected from your heart, then
mm,
that starts to show up in so many different ways, from a like um I guess anxiety, depression, anger, like
mm.
that starts to resonate, and that trickles
Yeah.
through and affects the very people that you're sacrificing everything for.
Yeah.
And I think the more that we can change that, and that's one of the missions that I'm on, is to sort of change that mindset for people, to go that, you know, you can have it all, you can do everything that you love. You put the right systems, the right support structures in place. Realistically, as a coach, right, you and back to money again here, but because most people will resonate with money, there's 8 point whatever billion people in the world. You don't need to please all of them. You need to please like 15 to 20. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's all you need. Like,
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
ask that question, most people are going to be like, yeah, I think I could sell something to 15 or 20 people.
Yeah.
You know, like there's so many people in the world and we all have different ideas. We all have different offerings. We all have a unique gene share.
Mhm.
Um, you've just got to find 15 to 20 that are willing to pay you to receive yours.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Naval Ravikant, if you're familiar with him, like he's famous in the Twitter space.
Who was that? Sorry.
Naval Ravikant.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, yeah.
familiar. Yeah.
So he's a famous guy in Twitter, and he talks about how you only need 1,000 loyal fans,
Mm.
and if they're willing to pay you like $10, like that's already 10,000 per month, like $10 per month, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'm just reminded with like a quote. I was talking to like a friend in Twitter, and he said something like the two most important things that you just need to focus on is a valuable skill, like what you said about like your genius, and relationship, like connection. If you can have and you if you can discover how your genius, like where you're good at, where you're great at, and be able to connect to people and show that I have a valuable skill I can offer to you. It's like you're good for life. Opportunities will just come to you because they see, oh, he's valuable and I like him.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. It's one of the best skills I think that I learned from basketball is that ability to relate to anyone. To be able to, you know, we've like met through Twitter, but like this is the first time we've spoken face to face, and we're just
Yeah,
speaking
yeah,
as if we've like known each other for years, right? I think
yeah.
that's a gift is to be able to relate to people and have those conversations and to encourage and authenticity through being your authentic self yourself, and that encourages other
Mhm.
people to be authentic, to feel safe and comfortable enough to really open up and talk about everything and create that valuable connection, like you say.
Yeah,
Um,
it's so important, like being able to connect to people, being able to see like their pains and desires. I mean, what you did about earlier, like people wouldn't understand it if you didn't talk about money. You know
mm,
what I mean? So being
yeah,
able to talk in those terms and then making them realize that it's not always about the money. You just need to connect, just need to find your
yeah,
genius.
yeah.
They'll understand it right away.
Yeah, 100%. And if you can make that shift and change their perception, then all of a sudden the whole mindset changes. The whole reality starts to shift because
Mhm.
they're not focused on those materialistic things that someone
Right.
can take away from you. And I guess that's the beauty of being in a heart-led business or a heart-led project. It can't be taken away from you because you're relying on
Mm,
your genius, your unique
mm,
gift. No one can take that away from you. Like, and
yeah,
when you're doing that day after day and that abundance starts to come, no one can stop you.
yeah.
There's no, you can't, they can't come and repossess your boat. Yeah, yeah, come and take your
Yeah.
boat away, come and take your house. Like, even if that
Yeah, yeah.
happened, I would just be like, okay, I'll
You
start
still have
again.
yourself.
I'll
Yeah.
start myself, I'll just build it
Mm.
back up again.
Goes
Um,
back to like the quote that I heard, something like entrepreneurship is just self-development masked with money.
hmm,
Being an
yeah,
entrepreneur is just like being your best self and monetizing that best self. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Um,
So you're talking about earlier something because I listened to some of your podcasts, dude, and you talked about like speaking from the heart, and it really was like interesting listening to that. I forgot what podcast that was, but you were talking about like speaking from the heart. And recently, I've been surrounded by people who are also like spiritual, kind of esoteric people, and that's why I kind of resonate with your messages. Um, like how did you kind of like connect with your heart?
it's a good question. It took me a long time. It was something that I've really pushed away for a long, long time. Like,
Mm,
again, being in that mining corporate space, this perception of what I needed to be, this persona that I needed
Mm,
to be to get ahead, or to get ahead in that space, or to be seen as worthy of the position that I was in, especially being a young supervisor, I guess. You're in a very dogmatic industry that's very set in its
mm.
way, very much like, who the hell are you, youngster? Like, telling me what to do. I'm not listening to you. And so I really had to find ways to connect to people, but I also really felt like I had to put these masks up to sort of show that I was mature, show that I was a leader, and it really stems back to the basketball days, and where that trauma was that I used to get told that I couldn't show emotion, that
Mm,
I had to be straight faced because the team
mm,
fed off my emotion. And if I was rattled and if I showed too much emotion, then the team would get unsettled and it would impact on the team. And so I developed a very good poker face. I developed the ability to really bury my emotions deep, deep
mm,
down, just become really robotic and wear those masks. And that took me a long, long time to sort of peel away those layers. And it wasn't until I started to experience, we bought the hydration organics, and I started to have
mm,
cacao very frequently. And cacao is a great heart medicine. It's very much a heart opener. And that
mm,
literally just melted away the walls that I had around myself. It took work, and I had to go through a lot of processes and a lot of healing and a lot of development in that space to understand why I'd put those walls up and how I was and the reasons for that. But cacao was such a potent medicine for me
mm,
in that space, and allowed me to really start to have those dreams again, to believe in myself, to really tap into that genius, to start to understand what my genius
mm.
was, and then go, okay, cool, I'm going to go and chase this now. It was also the middle of COVID hit, and we had the mandates in our space as
Yeah.
well, and we were quite against those, and that was another reason I left in the end, was that I was going to get fired if I didn't have it, so I just left.
Mhm,
Um, and so that was, I guess that was the catalyst. It all happened really quickly, of like me really starting to be in tune with what was true for me and being
mm,
prepared to stand in that truth no matter the consequences, right? And
mm.
for a lot of people thought I was mad, right? Walking away from $180,000 a year,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
16.5% superannuation. So only working 4.5 months of the year and home every night. It's a good gig, man. I could have
Mm,
easily stayed. I can see why people stay there for 30 years. I can see why people stay there for until they fucking like fall over and die.
yeah.
Um, which a lot of them do, and I can see why people do that. But I just had a lot of those things pop up for me about, is this true for me? The answer is
Mm,
no. What am I going to do about it? And there was COVID, there was um, that feeling unaligned in the way that I was moving up and what I was being expected to do in that role, was
mm,
starting to feel really unaligned, and I was growing a resentment to it. Um, and then there was also like this wanting to do more, wanting to not
mm,
feel like I wasn't fulfilling my purpose.
mm,
Wasn't I was really sort of just in that mode of a lot of that. What am I doing? And then Eli was born. And that was all at the
mm.
same time, right? When Eli was 3 months old when I walked away from the mining game. And so as soon as he was born, everything shifted for me from a priorities point of view. I did a post about it the other day on
Yeah,
Twitter around
that's beautiful.
just, everything shifted. All the things that I thought were important, where I was putting my time, where I was putting my energy, everything just changed. And so we
Mhm,
started to ask those questions of like, what world are we creating? Are we happy with the
mhm,
way in which the world is going? And
mm,
in both aspects, the answer was no. And then we sort of were asking, well, are we confident that things are going to change if we sit by and just let the world go by?
mm,
What are we going to be bringing our boys up in? And we weren't happy with those answers. And so I guess, like everything in life, you have a choice, right? You can either follow that and go out and create it, or you can let others do that for you. And we wanted to go out
mm,
and start creating it for ourselves. And so everything just sort of fell in a domino effect after that, became a lot easier. And um, cacao got introduced to me at that point as well.
mm.
And I formed a beautiful healing relationship with that, which was great because I had a very bad relationship with coffee and caffeine. Uh,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
six cups a night. Like I was adrenal fatigue, 4 hours sleep was enough, and I just charged through with the caffeine. And So I had a massive addiction to that, to the point where Elise would just like not even talk to me in the morning without handing me a cup of coffee. Like I was grumpy, and when you're in it, like people that tell you, my sister would be like, "You just look so like unhappy, and you're
Mm,
getting enough sleep." Like my dad would be like, "Mate, you look just smashed. Like, what's going on?" I'm like, "I'm fine. I'm all
yeah.
good." I'm like, "It's just
Yeah,
I'm on night shift. Like I'm used to it. Like I run off 4 hours sleep.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
normal. It's." And for me, that was normal. And I like tricked myself into thinking that that was healthy, tricked
Mm,
myself into believing that that sacrifice was worthwhile. And then all those things I just spoke about came up, and all of a sudden it wasn't worth it anymore. Those priorities had shifted, and I
mm,
really wanted to live a life of fulfillment and in service of others rather than just
mm,
living to create something that really wasn't even creating anything in the world, but alumina and digging a lot of crap out of the earth, and it probably wasn't that nice to be involved in anyway. So, and I was just doing that for a paycheck, right? So, that really shift. That was the big shift for me. It's like a
yeah,
number of different things, but yeah.
I get you, man. I mean, like for me, the shift was just really doing Twitter. That's why I had the guts to like, because I finally found what I want to do, right? Like being able to do what I love. And I think it's not the same, but seeing Elijah, like you were filled with love. And me,
Mm.
I found Twitter, like writing itself, I found what I also love. It's not it's not a child, but yeah, it's something I love too. So but would you say though that for people to find their genius, like it's a necessary evil to kind of like go into this whole loophole of working hard, like the being tired all the time. Like because for me, before I came to realize that I want to do what I love, I feel like I needed to go through all the going to college, being like having 4 hours of sleep for 1 year, like just being sleep deprived, being horrible, like just having a shitty life. Like, do you think that you need to have that before you can like sort of realize your genius or
I think so, depending on your upbringing. I think, for our boys, they're going to have a very different upbringing to what I did.
mm,
We're going to be teaching them about what their genius is from a young age. We're going to be teaching them
mm,
how to tap into that, to understand it. And my big, big vision is to have a school that does that.
mm,
That's everything that I do. That's the big 10-year scary bloody goal is to have a school that does that. And everything that I do feeds towards that.
mm,
Um, what we need for sustenance to survive, like to maintain our lifestyle, and everything else just goes towards that. And that's where my end result is. And that's what I'm working towards. And but I think everyone's different. But you do have to have some level of adversity. You have to have that coming to Jesus moment, which most people call it. And for a lot of people in society, it's doing like similar paths to us, going through that, going to uni, doing what we're told to do,
mm,
experience that. And for most people, they get out of uni, they get into a job, and they start to buy the things, right? They start to buy the toys, they
mm,
start to buy the stuff, they start to go, oh, cool, I've got some money, I've got some security, I'm going to
mm,
live it up a little bit. And that sort of entraps them in that. And I think a lot of people get to sort of 30 and they go, shit, what am I doing?
mm,
Like you start to think about,
mm,
I guess, maybe a friend dies, right? Or maybe like your grandfather passed away, and you
mm,
start to think about your mortality, and you start to
mm,
think about, oh, what am I doing in my life? And is like, do I really want to be doing this for the rest of my life? And for
mm,
some people, they're lucky enough to maybe still be single or have a really supportive partner that goes, okay, let's go and travel, let's go and see the world, let's find out who
mm,
we are. Some people do that at 18 or 19, but most people have that moment and then they come back. And if they're lucky enough, they can start doing what they love. But a lot of people get trapped, right? A lot of people get to that
mm,
age and then in a relationship, they're settling down to buy a house to have kids because they start thinking, oh, I've got to have kids soon because otherwise I'm going to be too old. And then
mm,
they're stuck, like, because that's such a pressure, And I understand this firsthand because I had that pressure of like, geez, where am I going to, like, how am I going to support my family? This is my role, is to support my family. And I'm about to walk
yeah,
away from this, like, beautifully
yeah, yeah.
secure job. We just bought our second place. We were mortgaged up to our eyeballs, like,
Oh,
there's a
yeah.
lot of pressure, right? And so I completely understand why people get in that and go, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to stay where I am. and I'm going to
mm,
sacrifice and I'm going to live this life. I'm going to lie to myself about it's okay for 50% of my life while I'm at work, and then I'm going to
mm.
enjoy the other side. And that's a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
sacrifice that people are willing to make sometimes. But I wasn't. But I think, like you said, to answer your original question, everyone has that coming to Jesus moment at some point.
Mm,
I
mm,
think we need to bring that forward. What I would love to see is schools teach kids what their genius is, how to do what they
right.
love, work that
Yeah.
out from a young age, and then spend time building those skills so that they can sustainably create. And if that
Mm.
means that kid wants to be the best bloody plumber in the world, well, then they become the best bloody plumber in the world, right? Because
Yeah.
we still need, society needs every one of us in our own little way to
Mm,
contribute, right? But that question should be, how can I use my genius to contribute to the fullest of my potential to society or to my
mm,
community? And how can I
mm,
do that in my own unique way rather
mm.
than us having a schooling system that goes, oh, we need 300 accountants, we need 400 doctors. Let's just put the smartest, brightest kids in there that maybe don't love it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sense to me. And I kind of understand why, from a societal point of view, the powers that be would want that, because it really creates that consumerism and keeps people stuck in it. But I don't think it serves, and my passion is to serve the highest good of people. And so
Mm,
that's like where the idea of the school has come in, to sort of work towards that, to be able to help kids find their passion and then go, cool, you want to be a travel blogger, sweet. Well, let's teach
mm.
you how to have a YouTube channel. Let's teach you how to do marketing. Let's teach you how to do that within
Yeah,
your
yeah,
neighborhood while you're still at home and supported by your parents.
yeah,
And when we're 18, you can go and travel. You can go and do it.
yeah.
And you know how to do it and you're supported. And you might find that,
Mm,
hey, no, I don't actually like it, but at least you've got some skills that you know what you love. And so you can
mm.
sort of shift where you need to from that perspective.
Yeah. I I resonate so much with what you mentioned about like being in your mid 30s and then just something happens to you and it's just like holy shit, what am I doing with my life? And then they just like go into this radical change. But for me, like that happened like quite like I think very, very early because if you don't mind me sharing my story.
Yeah,
So
man.
I I never met my dad, right? Like I was an accident child. My dad left before I was born. And then my mom, she uh she was afraid of being condemned by people, being judged. And so what she did was like she hid me. They altered my birth certificate. And I am technically the brother of my mother, like legally. So
Right.
I was registered under the name of my grandmother. Like my grandmother's my mother legally.
Yeah.
But she introduced me to people as like my mother introduced me to people as her niece.
Right.
I mean nephew, sorry,
Yeah.
as her
Yeah.
nephew. So um I kind of like was lost even when I was a child. Like I already felt like there was something missing in me. So that moment of kind of like the shit moment in mid 30s happened to be like really early. Like even when I was
Yeah.
young. Yeah. Like I have to do something in my life because if
Mm.
I didn't, I'd be no one. Like I had that realization. So I always was the guy who kind of like had the guts to take risks.
Mm.
So if no one in my group of friends was willing to do something, I'd be the one like, I'll do it. You know what I mean? I, and I mean, it led me to a lot of stupid stuff, like a lot of
Yeah.
accidents, and a lot of. Like, there was one time I had like a mountain bike, and we rode to the mountains, and there was a steep slope, and no one wanted to do it, and I was like, well. Fuck, I'm going to die anyway, and then I went in. I just did it in the middle there was a hump, so I flew and I got into an accident. Like, I broke my leg, and yeah, like just a lot of stupid stuff happened because I
Yeah.
was that guy who was just willing to take risks. But it my mother was a conservative, she was afraid of like those things of taking risks. And so every time I'm the guy who like every time I take risks, he would get like so mad at me, like so mad at me. And there was a time when I just suppressed that genius in a way. Like I suppressed that part of me who wanted to take risks. But then yeah, I just felt like horrible. I just felt like I was living someone else's life. And that's why
Mm.
I guess right now I'm not gonna have the shit moment in my mid 30s because I'm willing to do it now. Like if the business fails, if my Twitter thing fails, at least I did it early, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
at
100%.
least when I'm 30, it's not gonna happen anymore.
Oh, yeah, you learning lessons, like you're doing, like your growth has been crazy, like, and you're helping people. It's like, it's cool to see, man, like it's definitely, like you said, you're a mistake. It's clearly you're not a mistake, man. You're helping so many people. That's awesome.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, no,
So
it's an incredible story.
yeah. So just one last thing that I think I want to talk about is something I'm struggling with because again, like I'm like a hard worker, right? Like I believe in the fact that if you work hard, you will get the results. And I think sometimes when I like that's one of my problems. Like it's a very masculine way of dealing with things. And I was surrounded with people who have a very masculine way of viewing things. Like even my mother, I was surrounded with like a lot of women. Most of my family were women, but they had like such a masculine mindset where, you gotta work hard, you gotta finish college, you gotta do this and that so that you can get money and survive and have a family and retire. Like I mean, they kind of
Yeah,
like want to grab life by its throat and like squeeze out of it like every
yeah,
penny,
yeah,
something like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And recently, as I mentioned earlier, I've been surrounded by like spiritual people and esoteric people, and they kind of like changed my mindset on how you gotta trust the universe. Like you have to, as you mentioned earlier, act out of abundance. Like
Yeah.
be okay with just who you are. Trust yourself. Execute your plan, but not base your value out of the outcome. You know,
Mm.
and I
Yeah,
think that's kind of like a feminine trait. Like growth, like letting it grow, letting go, not really holding it. So
yeah,
I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Like growing up from a very masculine background, and then
yeah,
kind of like how do I integrate a more feminine side? Like the more
yeah, absolutely.
trusting side.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been on a similar journey myself, coming from that sporting, that masculine of like very much sport in town, like drinking alcohol, processes. This is how you do it. You're a strong man. You hold your liquor. You can drive,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like, and I went very heavy the other way, right? When I left the mining industry, I went very heavy into the feminine spirituality. I sort of probably look at it as being in the dysfunctional, like feminine, in that I was like
mm,
just like yoga, so that I could be called a yogi, or say that I
mm,
was doing my spiritual practice and
yeah, yeah,
meditating without really having any intention behind it. Doing all the things, like doing all the fluff without any substance.
yeah,
And I think now that like the masculine and feminine flows for me is such an integral part of my coaching package, is that balance
mm,
and being able to
mm,
weave between the both. And I think you need to have a balance. If you look at ancient cultures, the yin and the yang, it's got
mm,
it's got the feminine and the masculine aspect.
masculine, yeah,
As the feminine and the masculine, there's
yeah,
a small dots in
yeah,
between both, right? They understood that balance of being able to dive between the flows. If you think about that from a feminine perspective of creativity and nurturing of birth, there comes a point where then we get too dysfunctional in that space. So we need the masculine to actually bring that out into the world, to put the systems, the structure, the drive, and the passion in place for that idea to be able to birth. So if we think about
mm,
the feminine, you use that feminine energy of the flow state to really create that idea, to
mm,
nurture to a point where it's ready. A lot of people then get dysfunctional in the space that they want to hold on to it and do it all
yeah,
themselves. And they want to baby that, they want to be the mother of that
yeah,
baby,
yeah,
not bring anyone
yeah,
else in, that's dysfunctional. So there's that, you've used the feminine in a functional way or in a divine
mm,
way. Let's talk about it on Twitter. And then from an egoic or dysfunctional aspect, you hold on to it. And so it just
yeah,
like
yeah,
it was out. And a lot of creatives will resonate with this, that have that maybe have started ideas and started doing some things and got to the point
mm,
where they need to bring other help in or they need to bring more people in and they don't. And so that idea dwindles and then they have to go back to their 9 to 5 because they haven't been
yeah,
sustained it. Right. And that's where that masculine aspect comes in of like, okay, cool. These are the people that I need to bring in to make this
mm,
idea blossom. I need to just, again, be in the masculine of holding that end result of being able to see the
mm,
vision of being able to lead the path and trust
mm,
in others to come in and help out. And that balance between the two has been so crucial for me to be able to have that self-awareness of and just put the structures in place to support me in that because we all get in that shit, right? We all get in our dysfunctional aspects, we all get in our dysfunctional masculine or our dysfunctional feminine.
mm,
How do we, what separates the people who have created that abundance is that they just spend less time in their shit. They
mm,
just have more, they just have better structures and support systems in place to get themselves out of it. And for me, that's what self-development, like in spirituality
mm,
development, is all about. It's about learning more and more and more so that you can have more self-awareness to be able to go, oh
mm,
shit, I'm in resistance here. I need to do a process to get out of it. What's going on here? How can I process this? So that resistance lasts a week or a couple of days instead of 3 months.
mm,
And
mm.
then, you don't have time when you're working for yourself to be in your shit for 3 months. Yeah, otherwise you're going to end up back working for someone else. So
Yeah,
like it's I think to really answer that question of how do you learn to trust, I had to really get out of my mind. I think
mm,
the mind for me is that place where you start to overanalyze, you start to think, you
right.
start to have all the answers, and
Yeah.
that kicks you out of being in that flow state of that intuition and trusting your heart and really leaning on just your unique gifts, right? To
Mm,
bring through. I'm a big believer that we have everything that we need with the magic bullet. We have
mm,
that in our heart,
yeah.
and we go through different trials and tribulations, different hurdles to unlock more and more of that power source. And for me,
Mm,
the mind puts those hurdles in place as sort of like a check stop or a checkpoint of making sure that you've done what you need to do to
mm,
earn that
mm,
power. And then I guess for me, I had to learn to let go of the need to know
mm.
uh, and not have all the answers because I used to have all the answers in when
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
in
yeah, yeah,
writing space. I needed to know everything. I needed to
yeah,
know the steps. I needed to know the process.
yeah,
You
yeah.
couldn't just be like, conveyor breaks down. You can't just be like, oh, I'm just going to hold the end result that this conveyor is going to fix itself and it'll just work out. Like it doesn't
Yeah,
work that way. But when you're
yeah,
creating and using your life force energy, it's a little bit different to that
right.
materialistic world. And so for me, it's that holding that vision, trusting that I don't need to know all the steps to get there.
Yeah.
I've done a little bit about that on Twitter of that, the eagle and the elephant energy.
Mm,
The elephant's very much in it. You're like trudging through the jungle, you're
mm,
working through the bush. You might not be
mm,
able to see the path. That's the easiest path, right? But you're getting
mm,
shit done, you're getting stuff done.
mm.
And for me, that's like that, just that masculine of like forcing my way into the
Yeah, yeah,
world,
yeah.
right? Forcing that idea. And you've got the eagle that might not be able to see all the steps, but can see the end result
Mm,
and knows if it just keeps
mm,
going that way, it's going to get there.
mm,
So I feel like that's where that intuition and trust in the universe, I guess,
mm,
comes through for me, and that not needing to know all the steps, not needing to know all the answers, but just holding that end result and trusting in my unique abilities, and getting out of my head, connecting back into my heart, connecting what's true for me in any situation. It's like, is this connected to my heart? Is this true for me? Is this choice that I'm making
mm.
aligned? Because it's easy to get stuck in the head. It's easy to go back and get into resistance, um, especially when you're going all in on yourself. It's
Yeah,
easy for it to come up, for sure. Especially it sounds like for yourself, you're in this. A lot of your like family network isn't in that
yeah,
space,
yeah,
and
yeah,
so
yeah.
I find that I found this with clients. If they're the first one in their community or in their friend circle to go down this path of believing
Mm,
in themselves more,
mm-hmm.
they have a real struggle with their friendship group pulling them
For
back in.
sure. Yes.
Yeah. And so if you think about the best example is just people pleasers, right? If
Mm,
you have a people pleaser that's just like getting their energy sucked out of them and they're unhappy and they start to put boundaries in place, they start to actually like prioritize their own well-being first and not
mm,
everyone, the first thing that people say to them is like, "What's going on? Are you okay?" And it's because like you're there no longer sucking all the energy out of you.
Yeah.
You know, like you like, used to make them feel really good, and they love that, and they want
Mm.
that to stay the same. And so
Yeah,
even
yeah, for
if
sure.
you're killing yourself, they don't give a shit because they feel good. You know,
Yeah,
like
I
um,
totally get that.
yeah,
Because
got that
before I
answer.
used to like bend my back over for
Yeah,
people, like just to really do whatever they want and never say no. Like they tell me I'm because I'm a university student, like I like to study. So what I'm studying and then they tell me, "Oh, we need help here." And be like, "Okay, I'll finish, like I'll bookmark, go, okay, let's just read again later." You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like I always say yes, 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 yes. But then I think the reason why I could do that before was because I don't really like I was looking for an excuse to get out of that book because I don't really want to read that book. I don't really want to read that book. So
yeah,
when someone tells me, "Oh, let's go here," okay.
yeah,
But
yeah,
now that
100%.
but now that I'm doing something that I love, like with Twitter, like when I'm writing and someone messages me, I'll be like, "Why are you bothering me?" Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole different kettle of fish. That's interesting because even in like those relationship dynamics with friends, that starts to shift as well, right? It's like this, I don't need, it's not that it's a distraction, but it's like I don't need to be pulled away from something that I
Yeah.
don't love, or and
Mm.
how a lot of people look for those kind of disconnectors to be able to fill up their life with things that makes them feel good to trick themselves that they're like to stop that hide from the fact that they're lying to themselves about what they're doing.
Mm.
And so we cling to those like distractors, I guess, of
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
going out, socializing, having hangovers, all of those things that help us
Yeah.
disconnect from the fact that we're lying to ourselves. And but when you make that shift and you start following the truth of your heart, you slowly
Yeah.
notice that those start to drift away.
Mm.
Um, even relationships where I'm like, man, I'm the only one putting into this. Like,
Yeah,
what
yeah,
do I
yeah,
do
yeah,
in
yeah. I
here?
get
Like,
that.
if that
I
other
get that. I
person
get
doesn't
that.
want to put in, then I've lost plenty of friends over the last few years just from the fact of like, I'm chasing my dreams, I'm chasing my goals. This is what I love to do. And if that's not aligned with where you guys are going, then like that's cool. I don't think
Mm.
you ever really lose friends. You just lose that closeness, right? You still got those
Yeah,
memories,
yeah,
still
yeah.
like awesome and influence. But there comes a point where it's like, look, um, you tell me when you're available, I'll make time. I work for myself. I
Mm.
work at home. I'm
Yeah,
flexible.
yeah.
Mate, you say, hey, I'm free on Wednesday, let's make it happen. I'll make
Yeah,
it happen.
we can. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But but I'm not going to
Spontaneous.
endlessly chase up to hang out.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
you
yeah,
can't
yeah,
make
yeah.
the effort, and I'm just like I'm focused.
Yeah.
I'm going this way.
Viktor Frankl, if you know that guy, like he's a psychologist, he wrote something like Man's Search for Meaning. Are you
Yeah.
familiar with that book? Yeah. So he said something about that. It's like um, a person who doesn't have meaning distracts himself with pleasure.
Mm.
So when you don't know what you're chasing, like what if you're not really dedicated on what you're doing in your life, you just distract yourself with pleasure after pleasure, which goes back to like the what you were talking about, like rich people who just they don't really know what they're doing, so they just fill themselves with toys, right? Like they fill their happiness with just
Yeah.
material things that don't really matter to them, but people says, "Oh, it's a good thing," you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
So just going back earlier, I wanted to touch on this too because I was gonna make a tweet just earlier about you were saying something about not doing, not just basing off of your mind and what you know, because I'm a fan of Jordan Peterson, and a lot of people might not appreciate that, but I'm a fan of his philosophy, and he talks about how your rationality is not like you it can only go as far because it's judging based on what you know,
Yeah.
but what you know is so limited and the world is so big and vast, like there's so much more with what you don't know than what you know. So
Yeah.
if you act based on your rationality, like when you just think and think and think and overthink and you're basing off your actions on just what you know, well, how about the things you don't know? Like you're
Absolutely.
limiting
Yeah,
yourself.
absolutely. And
So,
if you think, and if you simplify that, it's like, ask yourself the question, are you where you want to be? If the answer is no, the only answers you have are the ones that got you to where you are right now.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Then maybe you
it's
should
that
go out.
simple. Yeah, it's that simple. It's like the person that you are today isn't going to be necessarily going to be the same person that gets you where you want to be in your end result.
Yes.
You've got to get out of the comfort zone. You've got to find the uncomfortable. You got to, the miracles lie in that uncomfortable, in that unknown, because that's what you're chasing. You're chasing the knowledge that you don't have. You're chasing that wisdom that you don't have. There is like, I guess you get into the quantum physics side of things, and
For sure,
we
bro.
start to think about like, if you think that we come down to Earth to have this
Mm,
experience, and we have all that knowledge and that power is like locked away in our heart, then there's an element that we do know, right? We
mm,
do have this knowing, and like we have this sense of, I've done this before. I know like these talents. I know my genius. This
mm,
genius is unique to my soul in a way, not just me and my
mm,
physical, but it's unique to my soul. And so I have done all this before, but not in
mm,
this lifetime. And so there's like that, it's a big conversation. It's a big topic
mm.
that I'm sort of really just skimming over the top of here. But there's that, this this version of yourself doesn't know.
Right.
But like there's that, if we have that belief that there's like, we do know,
Mm.
uh, and that information is just locked away, waiting
Yes.
for us to discover it. So then, and there's an element of us knowing, and I guess that for me, that's that example of people that are so naturally gifted at things. So they
Yeah.
like pick it up straight away. It's like
Yeah.
they've
Yeah.
have it and they've done it, like it's like they've done it for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And for
Yeah.
me, that's that example of like, there are these inherent gifts that are unique to our soul, and we've done them time and time again. It's just that in this lifetime we haven't done them. And so you've got to go into the unknown in this lifetime of what your mind knows in this lifetime.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's a big topic, which we could talk for hours, but yeah.
It's very interesting, bro. But you're approaching it in a very like a quantum physics place. But all I'm thinking of is Plato. If
Yeah.
like he talked about like the world of forms, like there's already perfect things, and your perception is like imperfect, but you kind of know the perfect thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So, dude, this is so interesting. If you don't mind me asking, just going deeper into like the quantum physics, like how did you kind of like go in there? Quantum physics, is it part
Um,
of your college?
nah, man, nah, I just started like learning about it and thinking and just reading. And
Yeah,
Kerwin
yeah.
Ray does a lot of that talk, and he sort of really mixes and matches the like that
Sorry, who?
esoteric. Kerwin Ray,
What's
um,
the spelling of that?
Kerwin.
Okay.
RAE. Kerwin Ray is his name. He's an Australian guy. Really brings the best of those worlds for me in that like super conscious, greater consciousness space, and the business mindset, and scaling and using that to sort of really bring you everything in your offerings to life. And yeah, I sort of like did one of his courses, and he mentioned it, and I started to really, it just really resonated with me. And then through doing shamanic journeys, and I've got clients who are shamans and teach shamanism and Chinese
Mm,
medicine, those kind of things, and the conversations with them and soul contracts and all of those kind of conversations have just led me to form this belief of, that's like sort of tied into that space, I guess, of like the idea that each of us is this powerful being that decides
mm,
like come down to earth for an experience.
yeah.
Um, and whether that's to, if we just get lazy in that other space and we think we need
Mm,
to come down and get a reminder of what life's about,
mm,
that we have the power to sort of lock away all
mm,
of our knowledge in our hearts,
mm,
and that we go through those cycles, whether it's the
mm,
one lifetime until we learn those lessons, but we go through life until we learn that lesson and we unlock that before we go back. And that's sort of where that idea of reincarnation, I guess, comes from, or like
mm,
multiple generational traumas of like that trauma stopping with you. And for me, that's sort of like that idea that that
Yeah,
soul is experiencing that trauma
yeah,
over and over again until it gets to a point where that person goes, enough's enough. I'm going to
yeah.
make this
Stop.
change.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And that's a step on that journey of like remembering
Mm.
the truth of who you are and remembering that power source. And yeah, it's cool to think about. Uh,
Yeah. So it's been great talking to you, Ed. It's amazing talk. Just to end it, because you've been talking about like a a guy that helped you a lot, right? Kerwin Ray.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm just curious, like just to end it, I like to end my podcast like this. What are like some maybe five books, five authors, or five like any five sources that kind of like influenced your thinking?
Cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
Kerwin for sure. Kerwin's been a massive influence in that space. I really love the work of, I like the concept of the work of William Whitecloud as well.
Hmm.
Eckhart Tolle, they're all in that same sort of super conscious mind frame of
Hmm.
like a little less of the practical world, I guess, or not so scientific. Um, my sister's been a massive influence on me.
Hmm.
Ellie is her name. She's wrote some books as well. They're more fantasy fiction novels.
Hmm.
Uh, but, you know, the work that she's created, the courses that she's created and that we're partners in at the Genius Portal, that's been a massive influence on my life.
Hmm.
That's a bit of a plug, but it's also been a massive influence on like everything, or the structures that I use to create um, what I do. And then, I mean, Tolkien,
Hmm.
um, Raymond Feast, from a like fictional mind point, I think there's a lot of truth and there's a lot of like things that we can take from those, like that fantasy world
Yeah.
that I think really resonates. I'm just gonna remember that guy's name, but the Magician books, um, yeah, that's Raymond Feast, but that Magician saga, and he sort of that was probably the trigger for me. There's a in one of those books, there's like this example that one of the wizards uses of that, like each earth is like basically just this like snow globe that this like greater being is just playing with. Right. And that
Hmm.
just something just twigged when that happened. And I was like, there's something greater. And so from that moment, I've sort of just been like looking for more information and looking
Hmm.
for more wisdom and knowledge in that space of like, what is it? Is it God? Is it nature? Is it
Hmm.
like what does that look like? And I'm a big believer in that hierarchy of, like God or nature created man, um, and then man created everything else. And so
Hmm.
in the hierarchy of things, like we only answer to God or nature. And so as sovereign beings, that's what we've got to like live up to.
Hmm.
Or live in the truth of our hearts based on that image or based on God or nature. Um, but yeah, those have been some big influences for me in that space.
Hmm.
Yeah, I love fantasy books. I don't read as much as I used to, but um, yeah, I've always loved fantasy. Always loved that the unknown of the miracles and the
Hmm.
magic, and have started to seek that out in my own life, that magical
Hmm.
unknown.
So I think what's beautiful about like just sharing last one with the fiction thing is that it you could learn it by yourself. It's like because most books, like most nonfiction books, self-help book, it's like you are already told what you need to do, right? Tells you step one, step two, step three, step four. That's how you achieve this outcome, like the cover of the book. But when you read something like a fiction book or like just the classics, the Odyssey or the Iliad. It's like
Yeah,
you learn from them and they're not telling you what to do. You just interpret it. Okay, who was the person that I resonate most with? What characteristics do I want to like imbibe? They don't tell you what you should do. You interpret
yeah,
it by yourself.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's just up to you how that resonates and how do you bring that into the world, you know. And that's what I love about, I guess, William Whitecloud's work as well, is that it's like there's this intuitive aspect to it. It's very much like everyone will write their own story used in those processes and structures. There's like a structure that supports you getting into your flow, getting into your intuitive space or leaning on that intuition to create. But for each and every one of us, that how that shows up in the world is unique and different based on our own genius and our own gifts. And I think if more people did that and more people were living from their genius, then
Mm.
we'd probably be in the stars by now. You know, we'd be living a Star Trekky kind of life.
All right. Okay, Luke. It's been great
Cool,
talking
man.
to you.
Yeah,
All right.
likewise, man. Thanks for having me on.
All right.